any costume.
Let's see who's first. I guess Steve, you can cheat. You're here already. You can just chat. Oh, Miguel.
Oh my God! Even if I had tried, I wouldn't have lost.
Unbelievable. Cool.
Are there prizes for first chat?
There should be.
All right.
I don't know whose hands those are.
That's awesome. So yeah, that was an Impervious ad. They're one of our core sponsors of this HandyCon, and it's really great. So, and it's the Impervious showcase. We've already had Steve here on a panel. I think he'll also be there's actually another panel tomorrow, right? Day 3. You did a panel yesterday. It's been and you've been really active in the chats, so it's really been fun to have you here supporting and engaging with the community. And you're co-founder of Impervious, and you're also you got the Park.io. I think
I do, because I don't have we need to make hats for Impervious.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, so Park.io is, I think, still the bread and butter, right? Like, it's
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a great. It's
not for lack of trying, but yes.
So that's Park domains on the web too. Expired, excuse me, or parked and expired. Maybe
all the above, baby. Everything in the legacy world.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys are really active there at NamesCon and other events in the community there, and it's always been a cool thing for me to see you and Mike Carson so active in the Handshake community since the early days. And and not just in the domains, but also building with Impervious and everything. So it's really great to have you here. And Matt Zipkin's here, also contributor Impervious. Everybody knows Matt too. He's super active in the Telegram and always helping people. I know people here, new people to Handshake, always thank you for your answering of their questions, helping them get onboarded into the community. So thanks for that, Matt. So I think it's a showcase. I know Mike Carson was originally planned to be on this session, but he had, I don't want to get, had
a family emergency.
Family emergency is the word. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's great. We get two of you to share today, and I'm excited to learn too. I mean, everybody knows about Beacon Browser and Fingertip, and I think it's a great time to just make sure everybody knows even more and how to use it, install it, set it up. So I'm really excited for today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So this is going to be super informal because that's just how I roll, and because it's been a long day, and because I don't know if everybody's as disappointed as I am that Mike's not here, because I enjoy hearing Mike talk about Handshake way more than I enjoy hearing myself talk about it. Not to say, I mean, I very much enjoy hearing Matt talk about it, which is why I conned him into joining this with me. But my part's going to be pretty well. We'll see. I mean, hopefully there will be a lot of questions, and if you guys have any real deep technical issues about what Zipkin has done as far as core contributions or Fingertip or Beacon, please direct them his way. And I'm going to give more of just brief history of why Impervious exists, what the purpose of all this is, how we got from kind of the gateway model to badass domains to forever domains. And then I feel like the handover plugin, Fingertip, menu bar, and Beacon all kind of spurred out of each of those developments. And so hopefully we'll cover it all as we go. And I can't necessarily commit to certain things. I am going to talk at least at a high level of things we've discussed that might be happening, but that'll be very vague because we're not very good about locking down specific dates for things. Somewhat by design, but yeah. All right, so let me share my screen just so it looks like we're actually doing something somewhat real. So Mike doesn't get upset that we totally mailed this in. All right, is it coming up? Yay, all right. So what you're looking at is impervious.com. Obviously, anybody can go to it. It's not super magical that it's on our screen right now, but you can see the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Carson, who would be here if he could, and then a picture of me from a decade ago, and then I don't know how recent Ziplin's picture is, and then our boy Buffer, who is also here in spirit. Yeah, so just really quickly, the reason Impervious exists, like so many things exist in my life, is Mike had a really good idea, and I had the sense to say yes, and that's how a lot of our interactions go. So Mike has a grand idea, he runs it by me for whatever reason, I sign off on it, and then we're immediately just figure out how to actually make it work. And so the idea was, hey, we're already really invested in this cool project called Handshake. I think at the time, he was already working with Matt, I think, because it was basically pitched to me as, hey, there's this amazing guy, he's doing these amazing things. We really need to find a way to fund just development in general, right? Because anybody that's in crypto knows, and they touched on this I don't know if it was in JJ's panel, JJ and Andrews, or in the previous one, but by design, Handshake was set up not to be a shitcoin, right? Like not to be just like a cash grab project. And really the genesis of the whole notion of Impervious was, look, if this thing ever does take off, like whatever that means, if Handshake becomes this wild success, inevitably there's going to be some sort of identity crisis, for lack of a better word, where people that are coming in solely for monetary purposes might try to do some type of like soul grabbing, essentially. And so wouldn't it be cool if we created a company whose sole purpose was try to keep it as pure as possible, which obviously is somewhat of an oxymoron. That's not really the right term. It's a contradiction. That's a better word, because obviously the whole point of a company is to function and survive. And in order to do that, you have to make money. But really from the very beginning, the entire DNA of the company was, yes, we want to make money so we can stay alive, but really we want to make sure that at least somebody is always looking out for Handshake, whatever that means, right? Not to say that we are the arbiters and that we know best, but we did want to at least try to make decisions solely based on like, is this kind of in lockstep with the like foundational principles and kind of the whole cypherpunk movement and all those things. Like that's the point of this project and the point of the company. And yeah, like hopefully we make enough money to stay alive and, and feed our families, whatever. But really, like, let's not be douchebags. Let's not do terrible things that other companies do. And so that's the very long-winded description of why this thing exists. Matt was the first really key reason why it existed. And then Buffer came along some number of months after that. But I'm not very good with time, especially in the pandemic age where days or years, so who knows? But yeah, so that's how we got here. If you go to impervious.com, you can see links at the bottom to, let's scroll down here.
You can also just go to https://impervious.
There you go. It's even better. Well, we'll get to that though, because you might not be able to get there yet. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you will absolutely be able to get to https impervious. But for right now, if you don't have the requisite, if you're not using Beacon or you're not using Fingertip, then come to the legacy world, feel dirty for a few seconds, click on some of these links to actually get up to speed on Fingertip and Beacon, and we'll get you there in a second anyway. All right, so just really quickly, since we're still playing this weird history game. So Gateway is not, like we're all in the same space. Like it gets muddy as far as like organizational structure or whatever, but Gateway was kind of our first introduction into like, how do we bridge these two worlds, right? So Mike and I came from the legacy world. Actually, we met Tayshan at a NamesCon right before, the world shut down, which I think was like a week before mainnet went live. And Mike had already heard about Handshake. I had not at all. And which is funny looking back, because I'm way more of just a degenerate piece of shit now compared to like what I was. So my progression as a human being is pretty wild when you consider where we were back, 2020? Anyway, so we met Tayshan. We have this idea of like, well, let's bridge the gap between, we're at this legacy conference, we have these cool blockchain root zone, like what's the most palatable way to onboard kind of the existing infrastructure onto this? And obviously an EPP-based registry was a pretty obvious way to do it, because That's how all the registrars are already set up to operate. So it's almost plug and play, right? Like you just say, hey, you don't really have to change anything about your system. You just now plug into this new registry as opposed to plugging into a VeriSign or a Filius or Newstar at the time, and you're off to the races. And in the very beginning, as you can imagine, there wasn't a huge amount of interest, which is why when we launched Gateway, because we weren't even convinced we would be able to convince anybody. And so Gateway essentially is just a fork of the Park code base with, a much prettier skin, but behind the scenes, a lot of it's basically the same and somewhat out of necessity because we're a small team. We're already running that code base for Park, so it's fairly simple to just run two versions of the same thing. And to our surprise, we got also Encirca and 101 domains to sign up basically from the very beginning. And so we didn't really necessarily even need Gateway. I mean, Gateway is great as a proof of concept, but that's solely what it was there for, is if nobody decided to take the leap with us, let's have some way for people to actually buy these or register these second level domains on these Handshake TLDs. So that's how Gateway comes to be. That was not at all like the kind of the grand vision of how this was going to play out. And so not after, well, I don't have the link up, but pretty shortly after that we launched, I don't have the Medium post is basically the same for .badass, but the original idea, like the real hope was that we could have a truly decentralized approach. So obviously the real criticism of any of the SLDs you'll get in Gateway is that they are obviously decentralized at the TLD level, but there's still a registry that's very much centralized. So in theory, if the powers that be tried, they could obviously take down that registry, in which point, yes, the TLD is still decentralized, but these SLDs are still locked in that registry. And so it's not truly decentralized. So the whole idea for .badass is let's truly create the first decentralized domain name where it's decentralized at the TLD level and the SLD level. And Matt can speak to the specifics, but just at a very high level, we forked the ENS contracts. And so the ENS contracts are what are managing the actual SLD part of the equation. And the other cool thing is we implemented HIP 005 or 555, whatever, 5, HIP 5, which allows you to actually, it's so you can resolve, we pointed to the ENS contract, but I don't know, like at a broader level, like what the actual title of, I don't have it in front of me. But HIP 5 is essentially where the magic happens as far as being able to actually point to the ENS contracts and have them do the resolution for the SLDs. And Kibo was also part of the .badass, right? Yeah, he's in the chat, so yes. He was also talking after this, so he can give a lot more information about HN, HNS, which is pretty sexy as well, which will allow you to do a similar thing, but on other chains beyond just Ethereum. All right, so that's .badass. That was the kind of the reason why we did it. It's a great project, but again, it was more of a proof of concept. Matt, is there anything you want to add to that, or am I free to keep going?
Yep, keep going.
All right. Well, at any point,
you're doing great.
At any point, feel free to jump in and make this a much better version. So that's .badass. I think Badass is when we were on Handover, right? The plugin.
That's how it started, right?
Okay, so because initially the idea was, we have the Handover plugin, and so because unfortunately, the full node or even SPV, like they can't handle the HIP 5 part of it. Like they obviously can resolve the .badass TLD, but they can't actually handle the SLDs because they're on the Ethereum chain. So Handover was handling that resolution initially. Then again, like the Badass was very much proof of concept, and so Forever was the first one where it's like, all right, cool. Like this is an actual like real product. Like because it actually, it makes a lot of sense. And Mike, I think very early on had this, this idea that he really wanted was, how do you actually make a truly forever domain, right? And so naturally the TLD is forever. So it makes a lot of sense that you would have quote unquote forever domains on a forever TLD. And what's cool about forever is, yes, it's also a fork of ENS, but it doesn't have renewal fees because that's what makes forever, right? Like you pay one time, you own the domain, and now it is yours for the life of the Handshake blockchain and Ethereum blockchain. As long as there's somebody out there resolving these things, it's yours forever, which hopefully will outlast all of us. We'll see. But that's where forever is. And unlike, people like for Unstoppable and DNS, like it actually is a true domain name. It can be resolved at DNS. It's not just a sexy pseudonym for a wallet. Like it's a true, in fact, it's an actual unstoppable domain that you can have forever. And so that is how we got to forever. And I think this is also when we switched from handover to fingertip. So I think this is when fingertip was also launched. And again, I don't remember the mechanics of, like Matt could speak to why we switched over at that point. But that is, I think, the first instance of fingertip. And this is also, I guess Buffer was on board by this point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that fingertip was launched at this time and not before is because of Buffer's onboarding.
Right. So did Hanover handle Dane or no?
No. Last year at HandyCon, when Kiba, Mike Carson, and myself were talking about Badass, it was just using HSD with the handover plugin.
Okay. So then Buffer comes on board. We launch fingertip. Fingertip does have native Dane. And then Beacon, I think it was December, maybe? No. Was it December? Yeah, it might have been. It was later. But regardless, Beacon is obviously I would argue I don't want to get into like a whole philosophical thing, but every time people talk to me about, it's hard to install this thing or whatever, like I hate to break to everybody that's super excited about Opera, like nobody uses Opera. And so if we're talking about like, let's use Opera versus let's use Beacon, it's the same amount of work. And I'm obviously incredibly biased, but I would much rather take a natively implemented Dane implementation from basically like the guru of Dane at the moment in the world. And just in general, I have more confidence in anything a Buffer's churning out than I do in pretty much anything else. So yeah, like I'm not a fan of this, like, it's a real hurdle to install an extension, or at that point, anything that's different from what I'm using right this second, go for the best option at that point. And I'm sorry, Beacon's the best option right now, well, at least on iOS, and Android and desktop's coming soon. So it's going to be very quick where I don't buy into this nonsense about how we need to get these integrations, unless we're talking about Chrome. Like if Chrome tomorrow decided they actually did want to implement this, which is obviously a very big task, then yes, then I'll get on board that train because they actually do have a massive market share. But anybody else, I don't buy into that conversation. And I think I mentioned this during the previous panel. Like, I also don't even get caught up on this at all. Like, and I think Matt and I haven't talked about this a lot, but I think if I was going to rank most important things for adoption, cool shit is number one, and number two, and number three, and pretty much number to 100. Because if everybody in the world could resolve Handshake today, yes, there are some cool things out there, but I'm not able to say like, oh, this is the reason you should stick around. Like, this is why we're so much better. Whereas if we had a lot of cool sites, like Johnny was mentioning in a game in the last session, whatever those things are, like whatever the killer app or apps are, that's how you actually get where we want to go, not necessarily like squibbling over, oh, does Opera support this, or is Chrome, or is Cloudflare going to finally do a resolve? Like, let's worry about, getting more developers, like people like Matt, people like Buffer, people like the guys that are showcasing all these cool projects. That to me is way more impactful than the coin listings and the browser adoption. And I love Jahan, and I agree that we do need more investment, but I am also far more on the, like, let's do investment on the development side. Like, let's focus on creating these really cool tools. And like, again, not to get too kumbaya, but one of the challenges that we've had just as a company is like walking that line, right? Because yes, like we would love to have more investment in Impervious so we could get more developers and we could do more of the cool ideas that we have. But it's like, you only have one soul, right? So like whenever you sell your soul, you don't really get it back. And so it's just, And now I'm starting to ramble, which is why I think it's time for Zipkin to take over.
And like to your point about Jihan's comment, which was about like trading domain names and how we need more platforms for that. I agree. You know, we need to decentralize from Namebase and have more ways to trade names. But the reason those names have value is because of the software that we're working on right now. Is because of the core software, the privacy features, the ownership features, you know, the security features, and the sex appeal of having a URL without any dots with your own name in it. And so, you know, like I went to the ICANN conference in 2019 with Boima and Mark Teinway, and Teshin was there, and Boima gave a presentation to ICANN about Handshake, and there was another presentation there that night about the GNU naming system, and we met our friend Martin, who's from Germany, who works on GNS, and he told us about how they deal with SSL using a proxy that signs certificates on the fly. And we were like, oh, that's so cool, because we knew about Dane and we knew how the white paper thinks it's going to work, but we didn't really know practically how that was going to happen. And so, you know, the back of my head, we're always, this is basically vaporware for like the first, you know, 6 months of mainnet or whatever. I was like, yeah, don't worry, we can use a middleman proxy that signs certificates on the fly. But like, I wasn't working on that. I was fixing wallet bugs, and there weren't many other contributors. And so like Buffer, oh my God, like everybody needs to buy that guy lunch. I mean, I don't know where he came from or why he's so smart or why he loves DNS so much. I wish he could be here tonight, but he's working on the Android and the desktop version of Beacon Browser. So I just want to give him a big shout out and a big virtual hug. Just for coming up and making Let's Dane, which is where it was called GoDane at first, which is where this started, and bringing HTTPS to Handshake. And then I remember, calling Boima and Mark afterwards and being like, it's real. This thing that we talked about during testnet, like we have it now. And then seeing Fingertip come out and then Beacon after that, it's just a fucking game changer. I mean, it's making this all real. So all you guys who are buying and selling Handshake TLDs, the reason those are worth more than zero is because they can do this thing. And it's true, like what, people have been talking about when Brave, when Opera, when Safari, when Firefox, whatever. And of course, we all like to joke about how ENS brags about their browser integrations and then other types of integrations. And I love to say how we don't need the integrations because we have Fingertip, which works with every browser, works at your system level. And we don't really know how these browser integrations are going to happen. I mean, the correct way, in my opinion, my wannabe cypherpunk opinion, the correct way to do Handshake is to verify proof of work on your computer. The entire Handshake protocol was designed around HNSD, the light client. The reason that JJ worked on the Urkel tree, it's all over the white paper, is the light client. And this is why we don't have an Infura. There was a story last week how Infura got like disconnected from some countries. Oh my God, we only have 5 minutes left. How did that happen? So,
because I'm already, because I can't.
That was great. I'll just talk about. I'll let me hit the questions real quick, and before I get off on a rant about how great Buffer's work is. When are you going to develop your own coin? We're not going to do that. It's too much work. It's a bad idea.
I don't know. Hold on. Wait a second. It depends on what the coin is. So I will say there is a coin in the and it's not a coin. It'll be a token. But I agree. Okay. I agree with what you're saying. At the same time, there is going to be something. I won't commit to it, but I will say that something is going to happen just because, if nothing else, I'm very doxed in this world. I am not doxed in the other crypto world. I am a degenerate piece of shit. So there will be something. That's all we'll say as far as a coin/token.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Is Impervious working with Brandon and Brave? Not really. I feel like I've had some good tweets with him. We know about each other. I don't know what else to say about that. The last thing we heard from Brendan is go ahead and open a PR. And I said, well, we're not ready yet, to be honest. And our PR is going to be huge because the correct way to do this is to install HNSD in the browser and not do what Brave did with ENS and Unstoppable Domains, which is use a gateway. So forget that. So we'll see, and I guarantee Brave is looking very closely at Opera's integration, and we'll reflect off that. When Android for Fingertip, Buffer's working on that now. I can tell you that the next version of Fingertip will be Chrome based, not Firefox based. The iOS version is based on Firefox, but all browsers on iOS are actually WebKit. They're all Safari. Buffer has chosen the Chrome. He originally didn't want to use Chrome because Google already has a monopoly on the internet, but then decided against that for the desktop and Android versions to use Chromium as the new Beacon base because it's just so much faster. Are we getting cut off here yet?
Oh, I don't know. No, keep going.
Okay.
Until they pull the plug. You're
right. All right, cool.
Fire.
We'll talk about Fingertip using Infura rather than an Ethereum client. Totally. My biggest problem with HIP5, is protocol I helped design, is that you're asking users to verify an entire other blockchain. And that's the problem with these decentralized SLDs. I think a lot of you have heard me talk about it before. So, ideally the user runs an Ethereum full node. That's the correct way to resolve HIP5 domains. I don't know a whole lot about the Ethereum ecosystem. My understanding is that Ethereum light clients don't work because their full nodes don't support it. And also Ethereum light clients, because they have blocks every 10 seconds, it's a lot more work than what, for example, SNSD has to do. How many names does Impervious own? A whole bunch. I'm sure Mike Carson would love to tell you about that sometime.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. How much money do we give to HandyCon? It's probably private. I don't know. As Handshake goes,
not a lot.
How will Fingertip speed up synchronization? Great, a technical question. We've got a lot of ways to optimize SNSD. For example, unlike a Bitcoin SPV wallet, Handshake, a full node, does not need to keep all block headers on disk because you only need the latest block header. You only need the Urkel tree root. You don't need every single block header to verify transactions throughout the history. So we can encode checkpoints very easily. Like we can hard code the hash of block 100,000, and then SNSD can just skip the first 2 years of the blockchain. There's no need for it. So there's lots of cool things like that. I don't think I have enough time to talk about Buffer's great ideas about how DNS resolution works in Beacon now and other ways that we have to make that faster and less impactful on the network. Because this is the other thing. These light clients consume resources from the network. We need full nodes out there to support the light clients. If we have too many light clients without enough full nodes, system's just not going to work. So Buffer and I have been discussing some ideas to reduce the impact of light clients, reduce the amount of resources that they need from the full nodes.
You're an animal. I think you just cleared the whole queue.
Will there be a wallet integration in Beacon? So that's a really interesting idea. And I keep mentioning these things to Mike in our weekly stand-up meetings. The fact that we are releasing a browser means that there's probably an income stream for the company somewhere. I mean, browsers are all free, right? Nobody pays for Chrome. How does Chrome make so much money? Oh, because of Google. How does Firefox make money? Well, they make money because they release Firefox where Google is the default search engine. Google just gives them money for that. It's pretty simple. So will there be a wallet integration in Beacon? I don't know. Maybe we can think of something, that kind of thing is the kind of stuff I pitch to Mike every now and then. We have a browser. Maybe we could put some kind of wallet in there. Maybe there's a way.
I've heard that as well. So clearly it resonated because the things that Mike and I talk about clearly means that it it landed on Mike. And then, so I agree. There's definitely something there. And I would also, not to cut you off, I would mention if you want to really help Impervious, because again, I think Mike and I are going to do whatever it takes to keep Impervious going in true Impervious fashion. But every time anybody registers a forever domain, that is directly helping Impervious. If that is our primary revenue stream as far as just keeping the lights on and allowing us all to keep doing whatever it is that we want to do, because the forever domains, they are, forever, but we do at least fortunately get the registration fees to then help fund Buffer creating this browser and fund Zipkin basically doing everything that Zipkin does for the Handshake community. And so, if you want to help us, short of just sending Buffer hugs and donations, definitely register forever domains. And we just got our 500th today, which is pretty good.
That's amazing.
It's ApeCoin, which is wild to me, but not that wild. But it launched, the goofy Bored Apes thing launched, and so of course somebody registered ApeCoin.forever.
Interesting.
One more just really random thing. This is just, again, I don't have direct details, but at various points I go in and out of very passionate about ideas. And one idea I did have to try to solve, or at least chip away at our big problem, is I've been thinking of so the foundation has a grant program. Mike and I have kind of discussed, and this is me basically trying to convince Mike that we should do something like this. I don't want to say it's an entrepreneur in residence, because I think a lot of those are bullshit, but something in the vein where it's something more intense than just a grant, but it's not you're a full-on employee. It's more just hey, I have this thing I'm really passionate about, almost kind of like an incubator, where if you have like really cool use cases for, like we obviously, somebody asked about the TLDs we have. And I think somebody also asked, like, are we going to launch more? Yes, we are going to launch stuff, but not just for the sake of launching like a TLD, right? Like I have .web. I'm not just going to launch .web just for the sake of like, oh, let's put another TLD in the space to get more people to register subdomains off of it. Like ideally, we want to have like really cool services or products or companies, ideally surrounding a given TLD. And so this is, again, long-winded way of saying, if you have some just like crazy ideas, reach out to me, Mike, and Zipian. I mean, reach out to anybody, because we're very much motivated. I mean, I don't know if you weren't here on day one. Actually, do you want to give like a quick plug to your contest on the fast? I forget exactly basically just a content contest, right?
Right. Yeah. Make a website, put it on Handshake.
So yeah, like everything. So it's, again, for me, that is 100% the thing that matters the most, whether it's just more unique content or unique applications, services, companies, whatever. And so if you have ideas, or if you have, make a website so you can win the prize from the contest. But then if you have like larger ambitions for things that could be done on a Handshake TLD that can't necessarily be done in the legacy world, reach out to me, reach out to Mike. Like we very much want to help anybody that has any ideas actually make them a reality, because that's what we're all doing here, is trying to actually make this thing something that the world needs, as opposed to just like a cool thing that we love.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for shilling out the website contest. If you want more information, you can check the HNS Fund Twitter, and the Discord is like the next couple of tweets down. All the information about all the categories, submission requirements, and everything is there. And even if you don't get first or second, there's 500 HNS consolation prizes. So there is something to be won for just about everybody. So definitely come and join, and get some more stuff to surf on the DWeb. But we are coming to our end. We're going to take a quick break, and then at 6:55, in just a couple minutes, Kaiba is going to talk about XN HNS and setting up HNS TLDs on different chains. All right. So any last words from you guys?
Thanks for having us. I'm sorry that Mike couldn't be here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming, guys. All right. See you guys in the next one.
Kinetic is a blockchain crypto investment firm based in Hong Kong and Puerto Rico. Founded in 2016, they were the first fund in Hong Kong and one of the earliest in Asia. With a portfolio of over 220 companies, they were seed investors in such projects as Ethereum, Parity and Polkadot, Solana, FTX, and of course Handshake and Namebase. Founder Johan Chu is an active investor and supporter of the Handshake ecosystem. Over 100,000 domains, co-founder of DWeb Foundation, co-founder of HandyCon, and sponsor of the Handshake House at Miami Hack Week 2022.